The moment I knew things would never be the same was when my daughter, Emma, stood in front of me, cold eyes masked by forced concern. "Mom, it's time," she said, her voice flat, like she was reading from a script. "You're just not able to do this anymore." It felt like a punch to the gut, but I didn't flinch. I stared back, trying to hide the storm brewing inside me. She said it so casually, as if my life, my years of hard work and sacrifice, meant nothing. As if I were already fading away. I wanted to shout, to remind her of all I'd done for her. The sleepless nights when she was a baby, the endless hours cleaning, the times I went hungry so she wouldn't have to. But my throat closed up, and all I could manage was a tight-lipped smile. I didn't know what was happening, but I knew something wasn't right. She and her husband, David, had been planning something behind my back. I could see it now. Those late-night conversations, their whispered words when they thought I was asleep. They thought I wouldn't notice. They thought I was just an old woman, no longer capable of defending herself. The next week, they came to help me. Help me. They told me to pack a bag for a short stay. Just a few days to rest. "You deserve a break, Mom," Emma said, her words coated with fake sweetness. David nodded, giving me that tight, uncomfortable smile he'd perfected over the years. But I wasn't fooled. I didn't pack a thing. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what they were doing. I wasn't going to fight them just yet, but I wasn't going down without a plan. They drove me to a place that looked like a sterile, lifeless hotel. The walls were a dull beige, the flowers fake and lifeless. It wasn't a home, it was a cage. I didn't even have my phone with me. David made sure of that. The nurse said, "We'll help you get settled." And they left. Just like that. Emma hugged me goodbye, but there was nothing in her touch. No warmth, no love. Just a cold, obligatory gesture. David didn't even kiss me. And they were gone, leaving me alone. They thought they could just sweep me away. They thought I'd quietly fade into the background. But what they didn't know was that I wasn't just old. I wasn't weak. And I wasn't done yet. They'd regret this. They would. The first few days felt like a blur. The walls were the same dull color, the air stale and cold. I could barely sleep, thoughts of Emma and David swirling in my mind like a storm. How could they do this to me? How could they make the decision to erase me, to shut me away like some forgotten relic? By the fourth day, I'd had enough. I sat in that sterile room, hands gripping the edge of the bed, my heart pounding. I needed a phone. I needed to reach out, to make someone, anyone, hear me. I asked the nurse if I could make a call. "I just need to speak with my daughter," I told her, trying to keep my voice steady, but it cracked with the weight of it all. "You'll have to wait until visiting hours," she replied, her voice flat, without an ounce of sympathy. I could see it in her eyes, she didn't care. I wasn't her mother. I wasn't her problem. I tried calling Emma's number when she left that night. I was shaking as I dialed, desperate. The call went straight to voicemail. Called again. Then again. And again. No answer. My heart sank deeper with each failed attempt. They were doing this to me. They were shutting me out. They'd already made their decision. The next day I tried again. But this time it wasn't Emma's voice I wanted to hear. It was someone who might understand. I reached out to the lawyer I'd worked with years ago, Monica. She'd been silent for 2 years, but I hadn't removed her from my contact list. She was still there. The phone rang and I nearly jumped out of my skin. "Monica, it's me, it's Dolores," I said, my voice trembling. "They've put me in here. I didn't sign anything. They're trying to take everything from me." Her voice softened, startled but quick to act. "Are you safe? Dolores, are you okay?" I didn't answer immediately. How could I? My own daughter, my flesh and blood, had locked me away and was trying to erase me from the world. The thought made me sick. "I don't know yet," I finally whispered. "But I'm going to fight. I'm not staying here." I wasn't crazy. I wasn't weak. And I wouldn't let them get away with this. I was going to get out. But how? I remember that night like it was yesterday. The moment I realized I wasn't going to stay a victim. The facility was quiet. The hum of the fluorescent lights was the only sound. I'd spent days staring at those bland walls, replaying the last conversation with Emma and David in my mind. I couldn't stop hearing their words. "You're too much, Mom. It's just for the best." I hated those words. The best. For who? Certainly not for me. Not for the woman who had given everything for her children, sacrificed her health, her time, her happiness. I had spent years building a life for them, a future. And now they wanted to throw me away. The anger inside me was like fire. It spread through my veins, hot and steady, until I could hardly breathe. I wasn't going to take this lying down. But how could I fight when my own flesh and blood had already decided for me? That night, after a long sleepless day, I sat on the edge of that bed and thought of all the people I'd met throughout my life. Friends, co-workers, neighbors. One name kept echoing in my mind. Monica. Monica Reeves. She was the only one who knew me, really knew me. She understood my past, my strength, my history. I had to reach her. I needed her help. I waited until the night nurse did her rounds. Quietly, I slipped out of bed and walked to the nurse's station. I asked if I could use the phone again. The nurse, a young girl who barely looked up from her clipboard, nodded. "I'll set it up for you." I didn't have a plan beyond that. All I knew was that I needed to get out of here. I needed to stop them from taking what was mine. I dialed Monica's number with trembling fingers, my pulse racing in my ears. It rang twice, and then I heard her voice on the other end. "Dolores, are you all right? I need you," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "They've put me in here, Monica. They've taken everything from me. I don't know what to do." There was a long pause on the other end. Then her voice softened, but with a fire in it that made me feel like I wasn't alone anymore. "Tell me everything." I took a breath, steadying myself. I told her everything. The lies, the betrayal, the legal documents I never signed, the power of attorney they'd forged behind my back. The rage, the helplessness. It all spilled out like a dam breaking. When I finished, Monica was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke, her voice sharp with resolve. "We're going to fix this. You're not done. Not by a long shot." I didn't know how we were going to fight back. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't just going to walk out of here. I was going to make them pay for what they had done. The next morning, I woke up with a fire in my belly. I hadn't slept much, but the adrenaline was enough to keep me going. Monica had promised me we'd fight back, but she hadn't told me how. That's what I kept thinking about as I lay there, staring at the cracked ceiling of that sterile room. I knew one thing: I had to get out. I had to reclaim my life before they stole any more of it from me. As I sat on the edge of that bed, I could feel my heart racing, the weight of everything pressing down on me. It was strange. It was as if the walls were closing in on me, and yet I knew, this was just the beginning. The beginning of the fight that would change everything. They thought I was weak. They thought I was broken, ready to accept my fate. But they didn't understand the woman they were dealing with. They didn't know what I was capable of. I spent the entire morning going over everything I could remember. The last time I had seen my lawyer, Monica. The documents I still had tucked away at home, the bank accounts, everything. I was mentally organizing it, filing it away, preparing for the battle ahead. Monica was the key, but I was going to need more. I needed to be prepared for whatever they threw at me. I managed to get another call through to her later that afternoon. Her voice was steady, professional. She already had a plan. "I'm filing for an emergency motion to revoke the power of attorney," she told me, her voice determined. "We'll use the facility's own doctor to confirm your mental competency. They can't just keep you in there." The moment I heard that, something in me snapped. I was going to take back what was mine. Everything I had worked for. My house, my life, my dignity. But as I was readying myself to make my escape, something happened that I wasn't prepared for. They came for me. Again. I had barely finished that phone call with Monica when I heard footsteps in the hallway. My heart skipped a beat. There was no mistaking it. Their footsteps. The same ones that had brought me here. The ones that had decided my fate without asking for my consent. They were coming for me again. I sat up straighter in bed, my breath shallow. Panic hit, but I shoved it down. I wasn't going to panic this time. Not this time. I had a plan now. The door creaked open, and in walked Nurse Linda. Her usual cold, disinterested gaze fixed on me. She carried a clipboard, the same one she'd used when they first brought me in. I could feel the tension in my chest as she stood there, her eyes scanning me like I was just another patient in the system. "You're due for a checkup," she said, her voice flat. "Let's get you up." I didn't say anything at first. I just stared at her, my mind racing. What was this really about? Were they trying to wear me down? To break me? Or was it something more? Nurse Linda didn't seem like she cared either way. She was just doing her job, which at this point felt like keeping me in line. But I wasn't going to be kept in line anymore. I stood up, deliberately slow, my legs shaky from the days of sitting and waiting. I needed to look steady, strong, like I had nothing to fear. I wasn't going to let her see the uncertainty in me. I had to remind myself that I was fighting for something bigger than just my freedom. I was fighting for my own dignity. And I'd be damned if I let them take that from me too. The nurse reached for the door, expecting me to follow. But something in me broke. I wasn't going anywhere. Not without my voice, not without my control. "Wait," I said, my voice louder than I expected. She turned back to me, her eyes narrowing slightly. "What is it?" she asked, almost impatient. "I want to see my lawyer," I said, keeping my gaze steady. "And I want to make a call." Her lips twisted into a thin line. "You can't make calls unless it's for family emergencies, Dolores." "I don't care," I shot back, my voice firm, unwavering. "You tell whoever's in charge that I demand to see my lawyer." I wasn't backing down. But what happened next was worse than I could have imagined. Nurse Linda left, but she wasn't alone. She was followed by someone else, a figure I hadn't seen in days. And this time they weren't just checking in. They were here to make sure I didn't have a chance. I knew the moment she walked in that I was in deeper than I'd thought. Nurse Linda was bad enough, but this person, this wasn't someone I'd ever expected to see here. It was Emma, my daughter, standing there in the doorway, her arms crossed, her face unreadable. She didn't look like the woman who used to sit on my lap as a child, who had laughed at my silly jokes. She looked like a stranger, someone who had made her peace with what she'd done. And from the way she was staring at me, I knew. She was here to finish what she'd started. "Dolores," Emma said, her voice sharp, cutting through the air between us. "This needs to end. You need to come home. The doctor said you're just not well enough to be alone. You don't need to make this harder than it has to be." I stood frozen for a second. I hadn't seen her in days, and in that moment, I couldn't even recognize her. It was like a piece of her, the one I had known, the one I had raised, the one I thought I knew, had disappeared. And what was left was a woman who thought she could control my life, my choices, my very future. "You don't get to decide that," I said, my voice colder than I meant it to be. But the truth was, I was done being polite. I was done being quiet. This wasn't about love anymore. It was about power. And she wasn't going to have that over me anymore. Emma blinked, clearly taken aback by my tone. "Mom, I'm just trying to help you," she said, the words rehearsed, robotic. "You need to let us take care of you. You're not well. You're confused." "No," I said, cutting her off. "I'm not confused. I'm not broken. I'm still here." I could feel the anger bubbling up, rising to the surface. "And I don't need your pity. I never did." Her face softened for a moment, but only for a second. The mask of concern slipped, and I saw it, just for a second, the frustration in her eyes. She was getting impatient. "You don't understand," she said, her voice rising. "You're just too old to manage this on your own anymore. You're not capable." I took a step toward her. I wasn't going to back down. Not now. Not when I could feel the power of my own voice for the first time in weeks. "No, you're wrong, Emma. You've always been wrong. And you don't get to decide who I am or what I need." For the first time in so long, I felt like I was standing on my own 2 feet again. The fear that had been suffocating me for days was slipping away, replaced by something stronger. But just as I thought I had found my footing, Emma did something I didn't expect. She took a step forward, her voice low, and said, "You don't have a choice anymore, Mom. We're done playing nice." The words Emma spoke hit me harder than I expected. We're done playing nice. The audacity. The sheer arrogance of it. She looked at me like I was nothing more than a problem to be solved, a burden to be discarded. I could feel my heart racing, my hands trembling, but I refused to let her see it. "You think you've won, don't you?" I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "You think because you've put me in here, made me feel small, that I'm just going to roll over and accept it?" Her eyes narrowed, her expression hardening. "This is what's best for you, Mom. I'm trying to do what's right. Right for you maybe," I spat. "But not for me." Her hands clenched into fists at her sides, her jaw tight with frustration. "Why are you making this so difficult?" she snapped. "We're just trying to help you. You don't even know what's best for you anymore." I stood there, standing my ground, despite the shaking in my legs, despite the fear. I wasn't going to let her bully me into submission. Not anymore. I wasn't the woman she thought I was. She thought she could control me, that she could walk all over me just because I was getting older. But she didn't know who she was messing with. "You don't get to decide what's best for me," I said, the words cutting through the air like a blade. "You lost that right the moment you decided to lock me away in this place." Her face went pale, and for a split second, I saw something flicker in her eyes, a hint of doubt maybe, or guilt. But it was gone in an instant, replaced with that cold, calculated look I had come to dread. "You're making a mistake, Mom," she said, her voice low. "You're not capable of making these decisions anymore." And in that moment, I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to see before. She wasn't just trying to take my house, my money, or my independence. She was trying to erase me. To erase who I was, what I had given to her. To turn me into someone who didn't have a voice. But that wasn't going to happen. Not on my watch. "You're wrong," I said quietly. "You don't get to rewrite my story. I'm the one who wrote it. And I'm not done yet." But as I stood there, locking eyes with my daughter, something shifted behind her. Someone else had entered the room. And it wasn't a nurse. It wasn't a doctor. This time it was someone who would change everything. I turned, expecting to see another nurse, maybe a staff member to diffuse the tension. But it wasn't just anyone. It was David, my son-in-law, the one I had tried so hard to get along with, the one I had always treated like family. But standing there in the doorway, his face hard, his eyes cold, I realized that he wasn't the man I had hoped for. He wasn't the man I thought would ever side with Emma. "Mom," he said, his voice low, almost patronizing, "you need to calm down." Calm down. I could feel my blood starting to boil. Down. For what? To sit back while they took everything I had worked for, everything I had built. I shook my head, taking a step toward him, my voice steady but loud. "You don't get to tell me what to do, David. You've already taken enough. You've already decided that I don't matter." His jaw tightened, and for a second I thought he might say something, but instead, he just stepped further into the room. "We're doing what's best for you, Dolores," he said. His eyes flicking to Emma, then back to me. "You're just not capable of living alone anymore. Too much. You need help." "Help?" I almost laughed, though it wasn't funny. "Is this your version of help? Putting me in a place where I can't speak to anyone, where I can't even make a damn phone call? Well, you're not helping me. You're making sure I never get a say again." David stood there for a long moment, not moving, not even blinking. He just stared at me like he had already made his decision, like there was nothing left to discuss. But what he didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that they hadn't won. Not yet. My mind was racing. Monica's words echoed in my ears. "We're going to fight this." I wasn't going to let them walk away from this without feeling the consequences of their actions. I wasn't going to let them erase me from my own life. "Listen to me, Dolores," Emma said, her voice cracking slightly, though she was still trying to sound in control. This isn't about control. This is about taking care of you. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, I cut her off. What I don't understand is how you could do this to your own mother. How could you steal my life, my choices, and think that's helping me? I could see the hesitation in her eyes now. Maybe she wasn't so sure anymore. Maybe she realized what she had done couldn't be undone so easily. But it was too late for apologies. Too late for excuses. Just as Emma opened her mouth to say something else, the door behind David swung open, and I heard it. The sound of someone else entering the room. A lawyer, perhaps. Someone who could help. Or was it someone else sent to try and break me further? The door swung open and I froze. I wasn't sure who I expected to walk in, but it sure as hell wasn't him. It was Monica, my lawyer. The woman who had been there for me all along. The woman who believed in me when no one else did. She walked in with purpose, her briefcase in hand. Her eyes locked on Emma and David like she was a lion walking into a den of sheep. She didn't need to say a word to make her presence known. The air shifted the moment she entered the room. She didn't hesitate. She walked straight to my side, her gaze steady. "Dolores, I'm here," she said, her voice calm but firm. "It's time to end this." I felt a wave of relief wash over me, like I could finally exhale after holding my breath for weeks. I had fought so hard, but I wasn't alone anymore. Monica was here, and she wasn't going to let them get away with it. Emma and David looked at her, their faces turning pale. They hadn't expected this. They thought they had won. They thought they could control everything. But they hadn't counted on me. And they hadn't counted on Monica. "I filed an emergency motion to revoke the power of attorney," Monica said, her voice cutting through the tension in the room like a knife. "I've also submitted proof that Dolores is mentally competent. She is not and will not be taken advantage of. Not now. Not ever." Emma's eyes widened, the realization hitting her. She wasn't in control anymore. The woman she had tried to break was stronger than she ever realized. David looked like he might speak, but he didn't. He just stood there, mouth shut, like he knew he was defeated. I could feel the power returning to me, slowly but surely. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. I wasn't just holding on. I was taking back what was mine. Monica turned to me, her eyes softening. "We're going to get you out of here, Dolores. We're going to make sure they never do this to you again." A tear slipped down my cheek, but it wasn't from sadness. It was from relief. It was from the realization that I had fought and I had won. I wasn't broken. I wasn't a burden. I was still me. And nothing was going to take that from me. As I walked out of that place, it wasn't just the walls I was leaving behind. It was the fear, the doubt, the lies. I was stepping back into my life. And for the first time in a long time I felt like myself again. The house wasn't just bricks and mortar. It was my legacy. And I wasn't going to let anyone steal it from me. Not anymore. I spent the next few days packing, getting things in order, and making sure Emma and David understood one thing. I would not be erased. I wouldn't let them rewrite my story. When I got home, I sat on the porch for the first time in weeks, sipping my tea. The air felt fresh, the sky clearer than it had been in ages. It wasn't just the house that had been freed. It was me. And as I looked across the street, I saw something I hadn't seen in years: peace. Real peace. The kind that only comes when you know you've fought for what's yours, when you've finally stopped pretending you owe anyone anything. Life isn't about what they take from you. It's about what you take back. You don't have to go quietly. You can fight for what you deserve. And when you do, you'll find a strength you never knew you had. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you've lived through something similar, share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.